You're listening to the Financial Source podcast on YouTube.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Financial Source podcast.
This morning, global markets are really grappling with a complex blend of geopolitical volatility and some shifting commodity dynamics.
Yeah, it's creating this unusual tension between risk and reward. We saw oil prices spike after the U.S. operation in Venezuela.
Right. Well, at the same time, the U.S. dollar softened significantly, and that was after some pretty disappointing manufacturing data.
So this fragile backdrop, it requires a really careful assessment because headline risks are now just dominating technical movements in foreign exchange and equity markets.
We'll be breaking down how the situation in Venezuela, including potential U.S. subsidies and export conditions, is set to reshape global energy supply.
And we'll also examine the surprising record highs in copper and the quiet but really crucial developments in U.S.-China chip licensing and global corporate tax policy.
Let's unpack it.
So it's a fascinating, but as you said, an undeniably fragile environment out there.
It really is. If you just look at the immediate market tone, risk sentiment is, well, it's holding up for now.
For now, U.S. equities closed higher, right? But it was mostly energy stocks.
Exactly, driven by energy. And European futures are only pointing toward a mildly positive open.
That tells you something.
It tells you that investors are reluctant. They are not aggressively chasing risk right now, despite that positive U.S. close.
Because they can see this mounting global uncertainty isn't just, noise. It feels more structural.
That's right. And that recognition of fragility is, I think, most clearly reflected in the currency markets.
Specifically with the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, the dollar is actually softening, which, as you know, it just goes against the standard playbook.
It does. I mean, you'd expect a major geopolitical shock, like the U.S. operation in Venezuela and the capture of President Maduro.
You'd expect a massive safe haven bid for the greenback.
But we're not seeing that.
Well, we saw an initial safe haven bid. It was absolutely there, but it proved to be remarkably shallow and very short-lived.
So this is where the macro reality really just trumped the geopolitical flashpoint.
It did. The dollar's support evaporated almost instantly after the release of a really disappointing ISM manufacturing PMI report.
Okay, so tell us why. Why was that specific piece of data powerful enough to outweigh military action and, all this political instability?
Because geopolitical risk, as intense as it is usually seen as temporary.
Right. Traders price it in, and then it tends to subside.
Exactly. But a genuine softening in the U.S. Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, especially one that disappointed expectations so significantly, that signals something fundamental.
Slower growth momentum in the U.S. economy.
Precisely. It signals a higher probability that the Federal Reserve's monetary tightening cycle is nearing its definitive end.
So currency traders are betting on the long game.
They are. A fundamental shift in growth and interest rate differentials. At the end of the day, that is a much more powerful driver for the dollar than a short-term political crisis.
So the message from the FX market is pretty clear. The domestic economic slowdown is a bigger long-term concern than these international political crises.
And that weakness plays out against the majors.
How so?
Well, it creates this sense of relative strength for other currencies, even if they aren't actually that strong on their own.
Like the euro.
The euro is a perfect example. It's edging higher against the dollar, but that's almost entirely supported by dollar weakness, not any, phenomenal Eurozone-specific drivers.
So traders are just positioning themselves cautiously.
Yeah, ahead of those critical French and German inflation prints coming up this week.
And sterling seems to be benefiting a little bit from the broader, albeit tentative, risk appetite that exists outside of the dollar.
Exactly. Sterling remains supported above that key 1.35 level. It's holding its own.
And dollar yen.
That pair is just trapped in indecision. The weaker U.S. manufacturing release narrowed the rate differentials between the U.S. and Japan, and that just removed the clear directional push that traders rely on.
But if the dollar is softening and risk appetite is still tentatively holding up, we see the natural result in the commodity-linked currencies.
Right, they're holding firm, and that's because of elevated prices in both metals and energy.
Which brings us directly to the epicenter of today's geopolitical tension, Venezuela and the oil market.
So crude prices are consolidating now, but that's only after they rallied so sharply on the news of the U.S. strike and the capture of Maduro.
And now the market is trying to assess the physical fallout.
And we have concrete supply tension. There are reports that indicate the U.S. plans to interdict a tanker carrying Venezuelan oil.
That is a direct, measurable threat to supply leaving the country.
It is, but this is where U.S. policy becomes incredibly difficult to read. It's almost a two-track strategy that borders on a paradox.
How do you mean?
On one hand, you have the threat of interdiction, imposing strict conditions on existing oil flows, maybe limiting sales to U.S. rivals.
But on the other hand?
On the other, we have U.S. Energy Secretary Wright scheduled to meet with oil executives to discuss actively reviving Venezuela's energy sector.
So it's a classic carrot and stick approach.
But on a massive geopolitical scale. It signals the U.S. is simultaneously trying to cripple the old regime's ability to earn revenue now.
Through sanctions and interdiction.
Right.
Yeah.
While aggressively laying the groundwork for a new, stable, and U.S.-aligned source of supply for later.
The statements from President Trump seem to reinforce that long-term view. He said Venezuela must be stabilized before any elections can happen.
And most stunningly for the market, he suggested the U.S. may even subsidize oil companies to rebuild the country's dilapidated energy infrastructure.
That subsidy possibility is probably the biggest buried lead in all of this geopolitical noise today.
I think so. Subsidizing the rebuilding of a competitor's nationalized energy sector would be a complete reversal of policy. It's a stunning financial commitment.
It signals that bringing stable, aligned supply back online is a top geopolitical priority.
Regardless of the cost.
And while the immediate political focus is on the capture, there was also a military angle introduced. The president suggested congressional approval might not be needed for troop deployment.
Although that was pretty quickly downplayed by House Speaker Johnson. But the instability is very real. We're hearing reports of explosions and gunfire near the presidential palace in Caracas.
And that instability is exactly what U.S. officials seem to be using to extract concessions.
They are. Reports say they're pressing Venezuela's new leadership with heavy demands.
Not quite.
A massive crackdown on drug trafficking, the expulsion of hostile foreign operatives, which likely means Russian and Iranian influence, and, critically for the market, they must immediately halt oil sales to U.S. adversaries.
So it's a comprehensive package of political and economic leverage being applied right now.
It is.
If we broaden the lens for a moment to look at global supply dynamics, we also saw key activity from the traditional swing producer Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and this offers a really interesting counterpoint to all the chaos in Venezuela.
How so?
So, Saudi Arabia adjusted its February official selling prices, or OSP. They specifically cut Asia premiums to just 30 cents above the Oman-Dubai benchmark.
So that Saudi move is kind of the quiet counter-signal to the Venezuelan headlines.
I think so. Even with a massive geopolitical fire taking place, Riyadh is signaling that they are worried enough about market share that they are preemptively cutting prices for their crucial Asian customers.
So if they're cutting prices, does that imply the overall global inventory picture is perhaps less tight than the headlines about Venezuela might suggest?
Precisely. It reinforces that there isn't just a single lever controlling global oil supply.
So what do Saudi Arabia's actions tell us?
They suggest the market is still competitive, and that perhaps supply, even with the Venezuelan disruption, is still robust enough that major producers feel the pressure to keep their prices attractive.
That's a crucial insight into the genuine underlying balance of the oil market versus the political headlines.
Right.
Okay, moving from the black gold straight to the red metal, we need to talk about copper.
We do, because it is signaling a purely physical supply shock, not a geopolitical one.
And prices are absolutely surging.
Oh yeah, we're looking at CME futures holding above $6 per pound, and London Metal Exchange contracts hitting fresh record highs.
Record highs? That's shocking. What's the specific catalyst here? It can't just be generalized optimism about global manufacturing.
No, especially not since that US ISM PMI disappointed.
So what is it?
This is genuinely shocking because the rally is extremely hyper-localized and acute. It's being fueled by supply concerns tied to the ongoing capstone copper union strike in Chile.
Wait. A record high driven by a single labor dispute in one country.
Yeah.
That single point of failure, it tells us something huge about global inventories.
It tells us two key things. First, there is virtually no inventory buffer left in the industrial metals supply chain globally.
So any interruption, even a small one, immediately causes a panic spike.
Exactly. And second, and this is more important for the long term, demand for copper. The metal essential for electrification, electric vehicles, grid modernization, it's already running hot.
This fragility suggests that the global shift to green energy will be highly vulnerable to supply shocks.
Because the world hasn't yet secured the stable, vast supply chains needed to support that transition.
That's a critical connection to tying a localized labor dispute directly to the success or failure of the clean energy transition.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, the classic hedge asset, gold, is doing exactly what you'd expect it to do in this environment.
Yeah, gold remains firm, trading near one-week highs. It's functioning perfectly as that crucial hedge for investors against all this geopolitical uncertainty and the weak U.S. macro data. It's the ultimate portfolio safety valve right now.
Now let's pivot away from the immediate commodity stress to address some of the long-term policy shifts that impact technology and global corporate governance.
Okay.
We have important context from NVIDIA regarding U.S.-China technology controls.
We do. NVIDIA confirmed they are seeing strong continuing demand from China for their new H200 chips.
And critically, they confirmed they have applied for U.S. government licenses to ship these products.
Which really highlights that Washington's export licensing stance is the central choke point for high-end technology trade.
Why are these specific chips so important? And why is that licensing decision so consequential for the market?
Well, the H200 chips are specialized high-performance computing components. They're essential for building advanced AI data centers and supercomputers.
Cutting edge.
They really are. And the decision by Washington whether to grant, restrict, or deny these licenses is the ultimate barometer of how flexible or rigid that technology containment policy will be.
So if licenses are granted,
It signals the U.S. is willing to permit some high-end trade to continue, balancing economic stability with national security.
and if they're denied,
Then the containment policy is hardening dramatically, forcing Chinese firms to accelerate their own domestic alternatives.
and that technological control, it dovetails with an equally massive structural policy change related to global corporate tax.
That's right. The U.S. Treasury announced agreements with over 145 countries under the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and the Group of 20 framework.
This policy change has huge implications for corporate balance sheets. Can you give us some context on that?
Sure. This refers to the global effort to implement a minimum corporate tax rate, often called Pillar 2.
And what is Pillar 2?
It's a global standard designed to ensure large multinational corporations pay at least a 15% tax rate everywhere they operate, preventing them from shifting profits to low-tax jurisdictions.
So what does this new agreement do for U.S. companies specifically?
The big policy implication is that this agreement ensures U.S. headquartered firms remain subject only to U.S. global minimum taxes.
So it provides a major legal and financial shield.
It does. They are effectively insulated from the Pillar 2 rules implemented abroad. And for you, the investor, this matters profoundly.
How so?
It stabilizes the profitability of U.S. firms internationally. It reduces the risk of unexpected foreign tax liabilities and dramatically simplifies their complex global compliance landscape. It's a massive structural win for U.S. corporations.
That structural stability is in sharp contrast with the immediate geopolitical volatility we see everywhere else.
Before we wrap up, we need a quick check-in on the other geopolitical fronts that are contributing to this fragile risk tone.
The Middle East remains highly active. We saw Israeli airstrikes hit multiple targets in Lebanon ahead of a key disarmament meeting.
But there's an interesting diplomatic angle, isn't there?
There is. Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly asked Russia's President Putin to reassure Iran that Israel does not intend to launch a major attack.
Which shows a conscious effort to manage escalation.
Right, through diplomatic intermediaries. It acknowledges the severe risk of miscalculation.
And the conflict in Eastern Europe continues to generate friction.
It does. Ukrainian President Zelensky confirmed preparations are underway for important political meetings in Europe this week.
And he also confirmed ongoing communication with President Trump's team.
That latter point introduces some political uncertainty as traders continue to assess future U.S. aid policy.
And meanwhile, Ukraine has accused Russia of systematically targeting American businesses operating within their borders, which is a direct act of economic friction added to the conflict ledger. All these events, from Caracas to Kyiv, are just piling sustained geopolitical stress onto the global system.
So if we synthesize this entire deep dive, the lesson seems clear. Right now, watching the headlines might actually be more crucial than strictly following the charts.
I think that's fair.
Venezuela has emerged as the critical energy swing factor, subject to these contradictory policy signals.
The metals market, specifically copper, is flashing acute supply stress due to single-point failures like that strike in Chile.
And fundamentally, currency moves are now driven more by macro and political headlines like the ISM data and instability in Caracas than by pure technical momentum.
So you need to be alert, not just active.
Absolutely. The interplay between physical commodity supply, geopolitical risk, and macro data has never been tighter.
And that leads to a provocative thought for you to consider.
Let's hear it.
Given this detailed discussion around U.S. intervention and the potential to subsidize oil companies to rebuild Venezuela's energy sector and bring that massive supply back online, how might the shifting profile of this global oil supply factor impact the long-term energy transition timelines for major multinational oil companies?
So if a new, large, and subsidized source of supply comes online,
Does that dramatically change the economic urgency of their own transition away from fossil fuels?
a great question to leave with.
That's it for today's analysis of the global risk landscape where commodities and politics are currently ruling the headlines.
We appreciate you tuning in to understand the connections between these fast-moving global events. Join us again soon on the Financial Source podcast.